I just want to, before I start ministering, I just want to share a thought. I don't know, as I was worshiping, this just popped up in my heart. Maybe it's words of my dad that was ringing at the back of my mind. And maybe love has been expensive to you up until this point. Maybe love has been a burden for you up until this point. Maybe love has been difficult for you up until this point. But I want to remind you that in the end, love is what makes things worthwhile. I never understood this as I grew older with my dad, and I had the bad experience of being there when my dad's dogs, my mom's dogs, when they weren't healthy anymore, and you have to, I'm not sure what the nice English words is, but you have to put them down, not because you want to, just because it's for the best, because their bodies can't handle the pressure and things anymore. And I can remember standing in that vet with my dad, and he had this massive dog. Sasha, I mean, we weighed about the same weight. It was I don't know what, a bulldog or what. It was huge. They had to bring like 4 trolleys, and it was a massive dog. And my heart was broken because you could see the fear and uncertainty in her eyes. But her back didn't work anymore, and it was painful. And we had to go there. And I was just standing there and going through this experience. Just to give you an idea, the poor vet, he got emotional in the States. It's not even his dog, but man, it was just such a beautiful occasion. And I can remember sitting in the car just thinking to my dad, why do you do this to yourself? Why on earth do you have animals? Why? Because you know this is coming. We know, we've been through this so many times, and he just turns around and says, you know what? It's worth it. And it's not worth it to me because I was standing there. You know, you need to be mana. You don't feel no emotion, okay? You just wear dark glasses. And it was just an overwhelming experience. And he says, a lifetime of memories. He says, love is expensive. It's going to be expensive. It's not going to be nice. It's not always going to be comfortable. But his conclusion, his best advice in that moment was, but it's going to be worth it. Well, for me, in that experience, I'm still struggling to see certain things. But I know my dad loved his animals. He loved his dogs. He loved my sister. And he loved his animals and his pets. And if you guys don't know us, my sister and I, we busy in a debate with who was the favorite child of my dad. She showed some false proof stuff that she ministered on one day, but we'll talk about that on another day, about being false witness in the church, and we'll talk about that. I just wanted to share that with you. Sorry, I got horribly digressed, but I just want to share that with you. Love is worth it. You know, love is worth it. Maybe you're going through something difficult at this stage, and maybe things are hurting at this stage. But in the words of my dad, it's worth the sacrifice. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6 to 11. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. Just want to add that quickly. This is not even part of my notes. Thank goodness they haven't started my sermon notes yet. That's fantastic, my timer. But I want you just to, don't be confused because of the arrogance of this world. Okay. God's hand is mighty. And it's not the first time in the history of our humanity where we thought we figured things out in this world, okay? And so because we become arrogant in our knowledge, we think we have figured God out. We think we have figured the humanitarian sciences out. We think we know things so well that we can argue about God. We become so arrogant in our design that we understand things in the world. I want to remind you on multiple occasions throughout the history of mankind where people attempted to tell God that He is not mighty. But I'm here to remind you this morning, as the scripture verse says, that God has got a mighty hand, and we need to be careful as a community, as a society, in order just to assume that because we can see far into space, we know God. Just because we can zoom into an atom, we understand things. I want to tell you that there will be shocking discoveries, and this is not even prophetic. This is literally just looking at the past, thousands of years going past, and every time man becomes arrogant in his ability, God comes knocking. and we go through a humbling experience. God's mighty hand, so that at the proper time He may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on Him because He cares for you. And if someone starts singing Cast Your Burdens, I'm going to ask you to leave this service. You can go to verse 8 for me if you guys don't mind, please. Be sober-minded. Be watchful. Your adversary, the mother-in-law, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kind of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. I just want to add this, ladies and gentlemen. Do not think that what you are going through is unique to you. You are not being punished. You are not being picked on. Life is life, and it's not comfortable. It's not easy. And before we get into this groove where we blame God, you need to understand that things happen in this world. And this has been a theme throughout this series as we've been speaking about this topic that my dad was speaking about. Verse 10, and after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to His eternal glory in Christ, will Himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To Him be the dominion forever and ever. Amen. I'm not going to really expand on that verse, but I want you to grab hold of this idea that there are seasons where we go through where things become tough in our life. But there's an agenda at the end of the season where the suffering should be for a short while and God will restore us. There's this idea of being faithful and persevering through certain circumstances. I do apologize. I had one too many of those medication this morning, so I'm feeling good. Okay, any case, so I'm just going to give you guys just a quick recap, and we're going to build from the scripture verse, and I'm going to conclude this whole series. So I'm a little bit on the sad side because it's been so enjoyable for me to share these beautiful thoughts with you that my dad was sharing, and we're going to conclude with that this morning. But I want to give you a quick recap. Last week we spoke about this idea. My dad gave 3 points in part 3 that we spoke about last week. I just want to remind you of jy kan aangaan gou vir my na die volgende een toe. It was you need to finish what you started. You need to finish what you started. This idea of perseverance is not about being first across the line, but the idea is to be the last. Oh, that worked on time. That's good. The last man standing. And then the second point I hope you guys can remember was this conversation about we need to learn how to fall well. Because you need to understand that you're going to slip, you're going to mess up. I got so frustrated in this week. Maybe it's a little bit to blame the genes coming through from my dad's side, but I had a puncture in my tire. Okay? And my mom was telling me the whole week, just go to the store, fix it, and get it done. And I'm like, no, okay? I'm a shy guy. I'm going to do it myself, okay? So I went to the store. I bought the kit for double the price than I would have had just to fix it. And I was adamant I'm going to fix this tire. Well, just to give you an idea how well I fixed it, I've been on Voltaren for 4 days now. Of course, my whole arm went into spasm. Okay, I just want to mention. I eventually got it right after 2 trips to the garage, after 2 jeans I had to throw away because they were filled with oil. Why is there oil on a wheel? I don't know what happened. I can just tell you my arm is stiff. Voltaren is expensive, and I should have just listened to my mother. But the point is you just need to understand that when you do stuff for the first time, you're not going to get it right. Okay? You need to humble yourself, and you need to understand that you need to fall well. And the whole conversation last week is about this idea about people that don't do something, they're not going to achieve anything. But when you're going to try something, you are going to fail. And here's the best part of it all, it's okay. The thing is just getting there to start and understanding that when we fall, we need to do it well so that we can recover from that fall and then restore ourselves. And then the third point was we need to get angry. And then I kind of just said, well, how do we need to get angry? The next part is we need to be angry at ourselves. You need to get frustrated with yourself. You need to, because that's usually what just works with me. I get frustrated with myself. I said, I've had enough of me. And so I'm going to fix things for change with 4 Voltarens. So this morning we're going to conclude this topic that we're talking about, the Beetle Effect, and it's part 4. And if you are here for the first time, it's just been a conversation about this book that my dad was writing in his last couple of months that he was alive. And so the reason why this is so important, because he gives us valuable information that we need to give our attention to. So this morning, we're going to have one final conversation, just one. Okay? So we're going to be done very quickly. Just one. And it's the idea about being the idea and the difference between having something that's important versus something that is urgent. And we're going to have a very, very serious conversation about this morning, and I want you to take note. This is going to be phenomenal. If you don't know about this, it's not that my dad is smart or I'm smart. This is general advice that you can find anywhere else. But I'm going to share this with you because it can make the world's difference, especially when you don't have a lot of time. So, I want you to give close attention to this quote. And it was from a guy called Mr. Eisenhower. I'm not sure if he was good or bad, but my dad quotes him and he says, I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. And he says, the urgent are not important and the important are never urgent, okay? Apparently, he's a smart guy. I don't know how smart that sounds, but it sounds good on the ear, okay? And he talks about this balance and this challenge and how things kind of just never works out. So I'm going to give you a basic rundown on what these life coaches gives you an idea on how you need to manage your time. So Mr. Eisenhower kind of splits this into two groups, but the smart people, they split it further into 4 groups. And you're going to pick up on this immediately because you know I'm going to show you why you are unproductive in the week, okay? Sadly, I get this right every single week, so I don't have any problems in this area. So I'm just doing my gifting and just going to share some useful information for you guys because you know most. Okay, let's start with the first bad part, okay? There's going to be 4 categories. The first one we're going to talk about is there are things that are not important and not urgent, but you spend your time on it. You don't even realize how long you've been scrolling on Facebook, ladies and gentlemen. You've been at work, and it's just one of the things that it's not important and it's not urgent, but for some reason, this area takes most of our attention during the week. And this is why we struggle to get productive. This is why we struggle to break through. This is why we struggle to get into healthy areas in our life. So this area talks about the idea of stuff that is, you can go to the next one for me. It's basically a diversion. It diverts your attention. You guys know this. I know this. I'm not really hungry. So it's not really urgent. It's not really important either. But because I'm not listening for my work, I go out and go eat a hot dog or whatever. There's all these small little things. Some of you are on level 3,400 on Candy Crush, and you are just dominating it. Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's not important, it's not urgent, but you are dominating, man. You started a club, you're joining one of those groups, and you're fighting stuff together, and you just top score, okay? Top score. And it's fantastic, but the problem is it's a diversion on things that you need to get done. And it becomes so addictive in our lives, This is probably the area that we struggle with the most. And you guys know what I'm talking about, because I'm the type of guy, I have a list and I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, I've got a reason why I can't do that list, because I need to beat Christ in Candy Crush. So there's always these things that you need to sort out. So that's the part where you not want to be in. But there's a third box that's also important. And this is the part of not important but urgent. Okay? And these are those type of things where you are now focused on what you're going to do, and that colleague just quickly pops in. And the conversation initially started with, where's the staples? And it ends up with the reason to life and how molecules exist within a vacuum. And you know that you just spent the last 45 minutes of your time talking about the last season of Stranger Things. It was not important, but it was urgent because she was right here, and you can't just sodwana. You have to engage with your colleagues, okay? You have to get. And when you have friends at work, it gets even worse, okay? It gets even worse because now it's not important, but you want it to be urgent, okay? You just quickly going to talk about the rugby that took place and things happen like that. And so this is kind of when I'm working from the bottom side up. So the fourth box was this Candy Crush type of idea. And I'm not bashing Candy Crush. I'm using it as an example, okay? So don't get angry at me, okay? And then you've got this idea. Sorry, I just need to mention this. This is interference with our day tasks, okay? Now, I know this. I'm using silly examples, but I need you to understand that these silly examples affect your life. You need to be aware of this. These silly examples can affect your spiritual life. It can affect your financial life. It can prevent you from getting a promotion. It can prevent you from getting that spiritual breakthrough in your life. Why? Because you're spending time on nonsense. And you like it. You know why? Because I like spending time on nonsense. It's fantastic, okay? But these are the important things, because my dad is writing about this idea, and we're going to conclude the series with, it's be careful between this balance about something which is important versus something which is urgent, because sometimes we spend so much time on things that is urgent that you leave the stuff that's important. And so you are busy your whole week with urgent things, and you never get to go to that next level, as our vision speaks about. Why? Because your work was urgent, you couldn't get to church, okay? And don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing urgent. Urgent is urgent, okay? I'm not saying that it's ridiculous. I'm saying that you are prioritizing urgent instead of the important, and this is the challenge that we are faced with. And now, you notice, I haven't been coming to church as regularly. I haven't been disciplined to speaking to God regularly. You can take it on any level. Financial, health, relational. I mean, it's just universal. This is just a principle, and it's very, very important. Okay. Now we're getting into the more serious parts. Now you might think the next one is really important because I put the word important up there. But the next block is important and urgent. And this is the area that gives us the most anxiety. Because when something is important and urgent, it speaks of it's a moment of crisis. You don't have a choice. Okay, you have to do this. And for some reason, most of us function in this block because we spend our time in the other two blocks the whole time. It's not important, it's not urgent. Maybe it's not important, but it is urgent. And you consume 90% of your day with those things. And then the last hour and a half, you have crisis on your table. And now the point, and can I use a simple example? You know, now you need to take care of your health, because I was eating burgers and cholesterol chips for the last 20 years of my life. And this is not, I'm not bashing you. This is a general principle for all of us, right? Okay. So it's not an insult. This is just, we all need to be aware of this. Because if you don't focus on what is important is going to become urgent in your life. You know, it's like the tax season. It's because we have delayed doing certain things. Now it becomes urgent. I had a little bit of a toothache. I've been leaving it, but now when you smile and half of your tooth is gone, it's important and urgent, right? Or it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, okay? And so this is the problem, and I do believe that a lot of elements of anxiety and depression and stress, it functions within this point. And if you're thinking this is like I'm giving you life advice, it's not. I'm speaking from a spiritual perspective, without a doubt. It just happens to be practical on a practical level as well, because you will notice things that are healthy for you in the spiritual realm will be healthy for you in the practical realm. And any case, but you guys know this. We are church guys. This is why we are here. But here is this golden box where we need to be in. This is the next box is going to be the special one. And this is the one where we need to strive to be in. Because we want to focus on the things, you can go to the next one for me, which is important, but it's not urgent. Because you can function from a healthy place. You are not rushed. You are not under pressure. You don't have to make nervous decisions, but you can take your time to focus on things which is important, but it's not urgent. For example, let's say you are healthy in your eating habits, okay? And you continue. Your health is not urgent, but because it's important, you are spending time on it, and so it never becomes urgent because you are prioritizing. Am I confusing you guys here? Okay. Because you're spending time on the important things, okay? For example, and this is true of me, this is true of you. I'm not pointing finger at anyone. I'm just talking about myself here. Sometimes we only want to focus on our relationships when it becomes urgent. This is true of our finances specifically. We only focus on our finances when it's urgent. But when it was important, it wasn't urgent. It's just like it doesn't matter. And again, I'm sorry. I'm not. I just want to put this disclaimer over here. This is not pointed at anyone specifically, okay? So when I talk about finances and relationships and health, this is not a bash on anyone individually. This is just a general conversation. So I'm not here to offend you. I'm just talking about the idea of important things are important. Okay, so, and it is what it is, So when you function in this box, it's about the idea that you're spending time on your vision and your goals. And this is the sweet spot. This is where you need to channel all your energy, all your resources to get into this place. But because we function in the bottom two boxes, we realize that the things which we left when they were important, now suddenly they become urgent. And when they are urgent and you function from that perspective, you are not going to be healthy. You're going to make promises to God that you can't keep. And I know this because I'm human just like you guys as well. And when you are in pressure times, you make big promises to God because, Lord, if you can just help me here, I will do this for you. But if you focused on God when it was important, you would have been stable through a season. You would have been fine through a season. Why? Because you're not functioning in an urgent perspective. And it's been building. So, I want to tell you an interesting story, and my dad highlights this, the tire story. I'm not sure if you've known this. We talk about the Beetle Effect and his broken rust bucket. He blames my uncle on this. So I'm glad my uncle is not here. He's probably not watching online CIS. And so I hope this is going to be useful to you. So the story goes something like this. My dad had a puncture in his Volkswagen Beetle, his old Beetle. And what happened at this occasion was that he was borrowing my uncle, Andre, he's borrowing his spanner because he didn't have one. He was loosening the tire, putting the tire back on, and as he was putting on the bolts, the phone rang. And apparently it was my mom. Okay? Now, I have no way to vouch for this, but he claims it was my mom that was phoning on the telephone. And he leaves the spanner, he walks out into the room, and he speaks to my mom on the phone. And while he's speaking on the phone, my uncle walked past him and he greets him and says, Johan, tot ziens, sien later. And he walks out and my uncle picks up his spanner, climbs in the car and he drives off. It gets much worse, okay? It gets much worse, okay? And so what my dad was, he walks out the house and he realized that the spanner's gone, so everything is fine, right? No. My dad is shy and humble. My uncle is not. So he didn't even tighten the screws. And so, no, it's going to get much worse before it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. And so my dad climbs in his Beetle and he's thinking about my mom. And then he just drives off. And us young guys, us humble young guys, as he stopped by the stop street, by the robot, there was another Beetle next to him. When two of the same vehicles are parked next to each other by a robot, and there are two youngsters in the car, you have a social obligation to test and see that the Lord is good. Okay. Both were 1600 Volkswagen Beetles. Okay. Same shape. Yeah, it's going to get big problems, Eric. It's going to get bad. And, my dad claims he accidentally slipped the vroom button. And apparently someone next to him started the vroom button. And when the light changed, they were off. So what happened is my dad was very confident because in the book he writes how he was beating the other gentleman. Okay? And he was driving up this massive hill and with the idea that whoever gets to the top first is going to win because you're going to get momentum on the other side. So you guys want to guess what got the momentum on the other side? The tire got the momentum on the other side. And my dad wrote in disgust how the tire beat both of the Volkswagens. And he's sharing the story because to explain the idea between important and urgent. So he was trying to explain that fixing the tire was important, But there was an urgent phone call on the telephone. Okay, there was a very urgent telephone on the phone call. And sometimes we leave the important to focus on the urgent. So he goes and speaks. He blames my mom. Yes, he does. Okay, he blames, and I'm just kidding. But he goes and he speaks to my mom on the telephone. But the thing which is important, he neglects. Okay. Well, in this case, my mom would argue differently because the phone call is important and the tire was urgent. But in any case, the point just being is, and he writes about this idea, and this is how we function in life. We leave the important things because there's an urgent phone call, and then later on it can have severe effects. The nice part of the story, nothing happened. He says it was a miracle. That tire did not hit anyone. Well, that's what he says in his book. So I don't know. I don't have any proof of that. So the concept is just this important idea. I'm going to share with you a piece of my dad's book as I'm going to try and don't get confused. When I say conclude, I'm meaning this is the last part, but don't put the time on the last part. But I just want to mention this idea that my dad explains this, and he's trying to express this idea that you guys need to hold on and focus on what is important, because you're going to be confronted with things that's urgent. And he's going to tell a story. We're going to read a story now, which is severe. Okay, this is a true story. I personally know the people, myself as well. Pastor Senna, they are still living to this day. It's a real story. Okay, it's a real story. And so it becomes so severe that the stuff is so urgent that it becomes so urgent you want to give up. With this idea that the urgency is too much for us to bear. But my dad is trying to bring across the point that you need to survive the urgent so that you can have tomorrow to focus on what is important. So let's read this story together. To explain what I mean and how it works, I will tell you about an incident in my office a few years back. A man came to see me one day. He said that he would not be attending church anymore. He said he would be ending his life today because he didn't see a future for himself. In 1 week, this gentleman lost his job. He lost his wife. Okay, she walked away from him. The kids didn't want anything to do with him. And in that moment, there were too many urgent things. They were already struggling, and he lost his job. There were a lot of promises made. The company failed, and they had to liquidate all their content. And he was just getting breakthrough in his life, and everything collapses. And when I say everything, I'm talking about everything. And carries on in the next part and says, it seemed like everything was going wrong for this Christian man. And listen to my dad. He says, and I, his pastor, it was so severe that my dad didn't know what to tell him. Because he walks into the office, he's not looking for advice. He's saying, I'm just coming to greet you and say thank you for what you've done, because I am going to take my life in this case. He didn't come to me so my dad says it there. He didn't come to me for advice. He came to say goodbye and thank me for the time in our church. Can you imagine the atmosphere in that office? Can you imagine the pressure? And my dad's seated there, and he's supposed to have an answer. He's supposed to have a solution, but his story is so urgent, my dad is at a loss for words. And not because he's shy, just because this is just too much. Carry on to the next one. And as he got up to leave, I asked him to do me a favor. Will you give God an opportunity to change things around for you? Give God 1 year in your life. And if he does not come through for you, then you go ahead and do what you wanted to do today. Now, I just want to pause there. That's probably not the best advice, the second part of the story, right? But my dad knew this guy personally. This was not a rash guy. This wasn't a guy that was just going to make harsh decisions in his life. He was at a point where life was not worth it anymore for him. And the only thing my dad could do for him is say, just give God an opportunity. Just give him 12 months. Give him an opportunity to change things around for you. He looked straight into my face, thought about it for a few seconds, and said, I will do that. Next part for me, please. It was almost 2 years later. In other words, I just want to mention this. I can remember recalling the story that my dad was sharing, and then added to that point, it was one of those conversations that kind of faded away. You know, it was traumatic at the single moment, but as time went on, it kind of slowly faded away. And then one day, 2 years later, this man walked into my office for the first time again. He had a smile on his face and a lady by his side. And my dad admits he was extremely surprised to see him. He explained the next part. He explained, Pastor, when I saw you the last time, I moved back to my parents' house because I didn't have a choice. I had nothing left, but I had to decide to follow your advice. 2 years later, I'm a manager at a company again. I earn a decent salary. My life is taking shape. I see my children regularly and they come to visit often. I met this lady and we are about to get married. Listen to this. And my dad being so humble, Pastor, if I had not listened to you 2 years ago, I would have missed the best and happiest days of my life. I came to thank you for the good advice that made all the difference in my life. And even though I'm teasing now with my dad talking here about himself, the idea comes around this idea where things were extremely urgent in his life. Things were extremely urgent. But my dad's best advice is try to focus in this stage on what is important in your life. And it took him time. It took him effort. You know, when this guy was at this stage, this was no jokes. He was at a serious stage in his life, but he was willing to give God 12 months of his life to say, listen, yeah, I've got nothing left, but God is my only solution in this stage. And things changed so drastically around that he is experiencing the best times of his life this side of what was urgent in his life. This is not related to the story, but it's going to give you this idea as my dad writes. He says, let me ask you this question. How many people do you think on their deathbed wished they spent more time at the office? My dad writing about going to deathbeds where he needs to pray for people. He has never heard anyone complain about that they wanted to work harder in life. They wanted to excel better in life. That's almost never, no, not almost. I want to say never, but maybe there's one or two people, but almost never the case. But for some reason, we spend time on what is urgent every single time. But your family that's important, you leave. And I can swap this around, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes we can prioritize fun things so much that our finances, which is also important, we leave that until it becomes urgent. It's not a one-size-fits-all. This is a principle you can roll through all parts of your life. It says, my dad carries on and says, next part for me, please. Having said that, there must be more important things in life that we need to focus on. We come to the end of our lives and regret spending more time on urgent things than what was most important. In other words, he's saying we regret that we were focusing on urgent things instead of important things. Carries on and say, we must admit most of us spend too much time on what is urgent and not enough time on what is important. We spend so much energy on less important things and miss out on what really matters. And now this next part's going to blow your mind, okay? It's going to be so good. No, really, it's going to be fantastic, okay? It's going to be so good. Okay. Remember, anybody can do anything. Okay? Are you ready for this next part? You are not prepared, I promise you, okay? But before you can do anything, you must do something, okay? Man, I highlight this part in this is the most phenomenal piece of advice my dad has ever. Anyone can do anything, but you need to do something to be able to do anything, okay? And the conversation is something like this, I know you can do anything, but why haven't you done something, okay? And so, I know it's very silly, but we've just been doing urgent things. You can focus on the important things, but why haven't you done something? And my dad refers to this in his book, and he writes, he says, someone once said in church, was speaking, he says, if you want to keep your wife happy, just do something, You can do anything, but you need to do something. Just don't do nothing. That's the best advice he had, right? And even though it's funny, I need you to draw this into your life, Stop complaining about things. Just do something about it. Do anything about it. But don't just do nothing about it, okay? He carries on and says, make yourself worthwhile. Make yourself worthwhile. Get off the couch and change the thing you don't like. Staying the same is a choice, but to upgrade, to go for better, will cost you a little extra effort, time, and energy, but in the end, it will be well worth it, and you will be the one benefiting from it. If you are not happy with something, change it. Starting today, you never have to be the same again. You never have to be the same again. The conversation is simple. You choose in which box you are going to function. Here's the best part. The other distraction boxes, they're always going to be there. You're always going to have a colic. You're always going to have your notifications of Candy Crush. You're getting 5 free energies today. You're always going to have that. There's always going to be crisis in your life. The thing is, you're never going to have more time. It's not going to be easier next week. It's not going to be easier next week because there's always going to be crisis. There's always going to be notification. There's always going to be diversion. But the challenge for us is those who want to win need to focus on getting the important things first. In the season while you are distracted and there's diversion in your focus. That is the challenge. The winners are those who get to function in the last box where they focus on their goals and vision. And don't be confused. They have to work very hard in order to put themselves in a position where they can function from that. Because it doesn't happen automatically. I promise that to you. It is automatic that you open your phone, yes. It's automatic that someone walks to your door. But you need to deliberately close your door and focus. You need to deliberately pack your phone away. You chose deliberately to show up to this service even when the weather wasn't comfortable. You deliberately chose to show up and dedicate your heart to God. That is someone that focuses on what is important and not what is urgent. So you guys know this. I'm not preaching to you. We can go scale the other people that's not here about this, okay? I've got the last 3 things and then I'm done. Your finances should be important, not urgent. If your finances isn't urgent, you're going to make worse decisions financially. It's going to happen to all of us. It happens to me. It happens to you. It just happens, Just close your eyes when you drive past McDonald's. It's fine. Okay, maybe one eye open on the road maybe, but, you need to focus on what's important now because later when it's urgent, it's going to destroy things in your life. Your family should be important, not urgent. Because the moment it becomes urgent, you are pushing it into a very late area and it becomes dangerous. By the way, not bashing you, this is relevant for me too. It's relevant for all of us. Your faith should be important, not urgent. Your faith should be important, not urgent. But you guys aren't the problem, right? Okay. I'm not saying other people are the problem. I'm just saying you are making decisions you are putting God first in your life. And it's not always convenient. It's not always easy. It's not always comfortable. But I want to share something because you are putting attention into what is important, the times when the urgent and the distraction and the diversion comes, you are so stable in your faith. You are so committed. It becomes what the Bible talks about. You become unmovable. You become secure. You become like a tree that has been planted. Why? Because you've been focusing on what is important in your life. I'm going to conclude and we are done for this morning. This whole series, we're just going to finish this with the 4 highlights of the parts. And it's been such a tremendous privilege for me to share this. And thank you for those who've been committed throughout this whole series. It really does mean a lot to not only to me, but to us as a family as well. Point number 1. We spoke about this idea. You can always be a blessing, even when you just have a rust bucket, Even when things aren't going well, you can always be a blessing. Part 2 that we spoke about was focused around that you need to get the courage to open the door. We spoke about how God was knocking at our door. And even though the door gets closed and stays closed, He keeps on knocking. He shows up so many times in our lives. And the encouragement for you is to keep on knocking, keep on showing up, and keep on pursuing those dreams. The third one, The third one was to never give up. And we're speaking about my dad going through severe treatments and severe suffering. And then at the end, he says he's still got a vision for his church. He's still got a vision for his family. He can't stand up on his own, but his vision is still burning on the inside because he refuses to give up. And the last one is that make it important and not urgent. I hope this has been a blessing to you. And when we have, sorry, may I ask you just to stay on that previous slide for me? Now, there's a lot of other stuff that he was writing about, but in this context, these were the main ones that stood out for me, and these were the first 4 points that he was talking about. And I just wanted to share that with you, because I hope that for us that are still here, for us that are still breathing, I want to encourage you to make these 4 points a priority in your life, because for my dad, at the end of his journey, these were the things that mattered to him. And I do believe that this can be of value to us as well. We are trying to make the material, I'm done with my sermon, just a quick announcement. We are trying to make this book available, but there are a lot of editorial work that must go in. My dad had a lot of individual documents, and we are trying to put that together. So I was hoping that it would be done by this morning, but due to the amount of work that needs to go in, it will not be ready. But we will keep you guys posted with regards to when it's done, if people are interested in that, and we will just keep you updated with that. Let's just pray together. Father, what a blessing it has been to be able just to work through this series. Father, thank you for the wisdom that Pastor Johan has been sharing with us. Father, what a blessing and a privilege it is for us to draw from these principles and apply them to our lives, Father. Father, I want to say thank you for our church. Thank you for our families. Thank you for this gathering, Father. Thank you for your faithfulness throughout the year, Father. I'm going to take a moment and just want to pray for each one, even if someone's just listening online, but anyone that's carrying a burden, Father, our faces, we are here and we are focused, Father, but sometimes our hearts are crushed on the inside, Father. My prayer is that every burden and every concern that you would be involved in that situation, Father. I pray for people's faith to be strengthened, Father. I pray for perseverance, Father. I pray for an attitude of not giving up, Father. I'm praying to strengthen each heart that feels weary this morning, Father. Thank you for your goodness and your mercy, Father. Our hearts belong to you. We pray that in Jesus' wonderful name, and together we say, amen and amen. As they're getting the announcements ready, just one point quickly. You will notice